Hello and welcome back to another episode of Popular Philosophy. Think about how uncertain our moment feels. Wars drag on, the climate crisis only seems to intensify and deepen. Institutions that people once trusted feel weaker and more challenged than ever. Some say that history is moving forward, that progress, even if slow and painful at times, is still being made and is still very much real. Others say that this is all a myth, that we're only fooling ourselves. And this is the question that I have for you all today. Who actually has the correct perspective? That question, does history give us hope or not, has been asked before, and two of the most powerful answers were given in the 19th century in figures such as Hegel and Friedrich Nietzsche. In my last video, I looked at Hegel's vision of history and saw that reason was unfolding and that we were ultimately marching towards a greater freedom. Today, I want to show how Nietzsche turns that vision upside down, offering instead a warning that history itself can become a burden. And between these two thinkers lies the question that touches each of us today. When we look at the crises we face, do we believe that history is moving toward reconciliation? Or must we learn to live without that hope? Part 1, Hegel, History as Freedom. Hegel's philosophy of history is bold. In his lectures on the philosophy of history, he claims the history of the world is none other than the progress of consciousness of freedom. You can find this quote in paragraph 21. For Hegel, history is rational, not chaotic. It has a direction. It is the story of spirit becoming conscious of itself and of humanity realizing that freedom belongs to all. This vision grows directly out of the Enlightenment project. In the 18th century, with figures such as Kant, who we covered briefly a few weeks ago with his essay, What is Enlightenment, and other figures such as Rousseau and Voltaire, they all believed that reason could liberate humanity from superstition and therefore oppression. Kant famously wrote in his 1784 essay, which I just mentioned, What is Enlightenment? That enlightenment is a man's emergence from his self-incurred immaturity. The Enlightenment promised progress through the use of reason in fields such as science, politics, and therefore morality. But Hegel radicalizes this promise. For him, history itself is reason. The Enlightenment said one should make use of one's reason. Hegel would respond, reason is already at work in the world. In Hegel's Phenomenology of Spirit, he describes how consciousness develops through struggle, contradiction, and reconciliation. Or in other words, dialectic. He writes, the truth is the whole, however, is merely the essential nature, reaching its completeness through the process of its own development. And you can find this quote in the preface in paragraph 20. So what does this mean? Well, for Hegel, this means the truth doesn't appear all at once. It unfolds. It is a process. Just as an individual grows by overcoming challenges, so too does spirit grow through the conflicts of history. Wars, revolutions, suffering. For Hegel, these are not meaningless, but necessary steps in spirit's development. In the Science of the Logic, he puts it another way. What is rational is actual. What is actual is rational. This does not mean that everything that happens is good. We can't claim that. It means that everything that happens can be understood as part of a rational process. And in this, we can say that history is intelligible and that it has a structure. Even art, in Hegel's view, expresses spirit of history. We find this in his lectures on aesthetics, where he says, art is one of the means by which a nation brings before itself the true interest of its spirit. So, this is why Hegel gives hope. Even when history looks fractured, it still has a telos. It has a direction. Humanity is not wandering aimlessly for Hegel. There is reason always at work. But, and this is the important thing, that faith in history's rationality is really the faith of enlightenment, taken to its most ambitious conclusions. We now have to consider how the successors of Hegel took up that ambitious conclusion. Part 2, Nietzsche, history as a burden. Nietzsche thought that this was all a dangerous illusion. Where Hegel saw history as rational and progressive, Nietzsche saw it as potentially toxic, something that could weigh us down and smother life. In his essay from 1874, titled On the Use and Abuse of History for Life, Nietzsche warns, we need history for life and action, not as a convenient way to avoid life and action. For Nietzsche, history only matters if it serves life, if it empowers us to create, to affirm, and to live fully. Otherwise, history just becomes a burden. And here's where Nietzsche turns not just against Hegel, but against the project of enlightenment itself, as he was one of its ardent critics. The Enlightenment had promised that reason and progress would set us free. Hegel universalized that promise in the concept of history. Nietzsche thinks both are symptoms of the same sickness, the need to believe in redemption from something outside of life itself. In other works, Nietzsche describes this very need as decadence. He describes three kinds of history, those being monumental, antiquarian, and critical. Each has its use, but each also has its own danger. Monumental history can inspire, but also blind us. Antiquarian history preserves, but can trap us in nostalgia. Critical history can liberate, but it can also destroy. Much like Nietzsche's conception of the hammer in Twilight of Idols. Nietzsche writes, a generation that cannot bear to live without history is like a man who suffers from consuming fever. And yet, fever itself is a part of his body, inseparable from it. For Nietzsche, modern Europe was sick with history, obsessed with analyzing the past instead of creating the future. This was, in his eyes, the real danger of Hegelian philosophy. It seduced people into thinking that history itself, the collection of facts, had meaning, when in fact, meaning must be created and not merely discovered. This is why Nietzsche imagines the challenge of eternal reoccurrence. In The Gay Science, paragraph 341, he has a demon whisper, this life, as you now live it and have lived it, you will have to live once more, and innumerable times more. Instead of history marching forward towards reconciliation, Nietzsche confronts us with the possibility that it simply repeats forever. The challenge is not to find comfort in progress, but to affirm life even under this weight. So here is where the two clash. Part 3, the clash. For Hegel, history gives us hope. It is the process of reason realizing itself, freedom expanding, spirit knowing itself. For Nietzsche, history threatens us, or can threaten us. It tempts us with illusions of progress, distancing us from the harder task of living and creating meaning today. In a way, their disagreement is about the Enlightenment project itself, which we've been trying to cover over the past few weeks. Was the Enlightenment on the right path to see history as humanity's way out of darkness and into reason? Or was it, as Nietzsche saw, just another form of an illusion, a secularized version of Christian hope, promising salvation through progress instead of God? And in our time, these questions cut deep. Think of all the challenges that our world faces today. Is this all a part of a rational process unfolding, pushing towards global recognition of freedom and responsibility? Or is it a sign that history gives us no guarantees, and survival depends only on our capacity to act creatively? Think of technology. Is it the next stage of spirit, bringing about a new form of freedom? Or is technology a new form of sickness, overwhelming life with information and detaching us from our own creation? Here we see how this clash is more alive than ever. So part 4, why this matters to us today. This whole enterprise is not merely academic. This is existential. If we follow Hegel, we can take comfort in the idea that history has meaning, that our struggles fit into a larger rational whole. This makes it possible for us to hope in dark times. If we follow Nietzsche, we strip away that comfort. But in doing so, we might find deeper courage. That courage to live and to create without waiting for history to redeem us. Both paths are risky. Trust too much in Hegel, and we become complacent, excusing injustice as just a part of the process. Follow Nietzsche too far, and we may lose all sense of history's value, thus collapsing into the very thing that Nietzsche contested, which was nihilism. That tension between trust in history and the demand to create meaning for ourselves is exactly the tension of our time. And maybe it has always been this way. So my question for you all is, who actually has the most tenable conception of history? Is it Hegel's rational history? Or is it Nietzsche's challenge for us to take up our own time with creative meaning? If you found this video thought-provoking, please like, comment, and subscribe. I look forward to bringing you all more content in the future, as I do have planned a longer crash course in the history of philosophy. Thank you.